Howdy my totally tubular gamers. We're back with another video in the woods. I don't know where I'm going, but let's go.
So today I got a ranking video for you, but we're going to be talking about a little bit of an older series. We're going to be talking about the Flatout series. Aw yeah! Now for the unfamiliar, Flatout is a series of racing / destruction derby games that were most prevalent during the mid-2000s. This is a series of arcade racers where speed and fancy cars kinda takes a bit of a backseat to just total carnage. Rather than getting into these brand new, glamorous, pristine vehicles that can go 0 to 90 in 3 seconds, you're driving the opposite in the Flatout games. You're driving old, beat-up junkers that belong in a junkyard. They're ready to be trashed. They're falling apart. They can barely even hit 70 or 80 miles per hour. And they're about as safe as going to any Jack in the Box at 3 a.m. All these cars will be smashing into each other left and right. You'll see the drivers flying out the front windows. And sometimes you're just lucky if you can even finish the race. That's what the Flatout games are all about. These really are some of the most chaotic racing games ever made. It is just sheer carnage left, right, and center. But it's also one of my favorite racing game series of all time. My god, do I love a few of these games to pieces. I've been playing a few of these games for many years and still come back to them to this day. And I'll be going over why soon enough. Now, the history of Flatout is a bit shaky, but we really are going to be looking at all of the games here. Flatout 1, 2, Ultimate Carnage, Flatout on Wii, Flatout 3, and finally Flatout 4. There was the PSP port of Flatout 2, but that's just getting bunched with Flatout 2. Now, while the original few games were developed by Bugbear, the series has changed developer hands a few times, with Bugbear moving on to grander things. They actually would go on to develop Wreckfest and now Wreckfest 2, and while those games certainly have the spirit of Flatout, they don't have Flatout in the title, and they're pretty different destruction derby games. They're actually more like Sims versus Flatout's more wild, arcade, chaotic nature. And so today we're going to be ranking all of the Flatout games from worst to best, stacking them up against each other, giving each one of them a little review, sharing my thoughts, feelings, memories, etc. As always, get the popcorn, get the beef jerky, get the Wendy's spicy nuggets, start going to bed, start the car up, however you're going to watch or listen to this video. We might be here a while. I got a lot of memories with these games, and I'm honestly just so stoked to talk about these games again. Many years ago, I did rank this series, but I actually forgot about Flatout Wii, and I just wasn't too happy with how that video came out. And Flatout is such an underrated series. It's arguably the most underrated racing game series of them all. It deserves all the love in the world, so yeah, I'm redoing the ranking. This is the definitive ranking of the Flatout games. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Let's get to the ranking. What is the worst of the Flatout games? You probably already know. So here we have Flatout 3 Chaos and Destruction, which was developed by Team 6 Game Studios and released exclusively for the PC in 2011. So Flatout 3 is not only the worst game in the entire Flatout series, but it's easily one of the worst video games ever made. And it's really unfortunate that the Flatout name is tied to this horrible abomination, and it's hard to believe that this was supposed to be a follow-up to the awesome Flatout 2. The game is just fundamentally broken on every conceivable level, and it's one of the rare games where I don't have a single nice thing to say about it. Sure, if you squint your eyes and look real hard at this one, you might see some semblance of a Flatout game here. You'll see some cars going kinda fast and hitting each other, but that's like saying you had spaghetti for dinner when all you actually had was a crusty, half-eaten, shit-covered tomato. Anyway, with this being a racing game, I guess we should talk about the racing. Oh, it's awful. It's just absolutely atrocious. The vehicle handling and feel is some of the worst you'll find of any video game. They understeer, they oversteer, they go everywhere except where you're trying to go. They're cumbersome, they're unresponsive, turning can feel like an absolute chore at times. When it comes to this game's sense of speed, it doesn't have that. It has sense of slow. It feels as slow as it looks. The physics are just horrible. They're wildly inconsistent, and it feels like they were developed by tweakers. It really just doesn't make any sense here. The collision detection is even worse. Look, the older Flatout games, they were janky at times, but that was also part of their charm. There's nothing charming about this. It just feels like you're playing a broken video game. You'll frequently get stuck on the other vehicles, on the environment, the car just bounces all over the place. It's not nice, and it only gets worse. The AI is dumb as rocks here. I think a lobotomized 90-year-old would be a better driver than the AI in this game. It is shockingly bad. It is almost big rigs bad. Like, it is rare that you find AI this bad. I say AI, you know, artificial intelligence, but there's no intelligence here. It's just artificial. And speaking of, we have this game's presentation, vibe, and atmosphere. It looks awful. This game came out in 2011, and you could convince me that this was an early PS2 title. It somehow looks worse than the original games. There's just a complete lack of detail when it comes to these vehicles and environments, and some of these vehicles look like they're from a different game. There's no coherent art style. This game has so much motion blur that it looks like Vaseline was poured all over the screen. Maybe somebody was lubing up and it got stuck in the game's code or something. It's pretty ridiculous when it comes to the motion blur, and then the game is unoptimized. Shocker. There is music here, but it's not the incredible licensed soundtracks of the older games. There's music in the sense that noise plays when you're racing. But wait, there's actually more to this game. There's actually 9 different game modes, more than just racing. There's speed, night shift, stuntman, off-road, challenge, monster truck, and even battle arena. But you know what? It doesn't fucking matter because it all sucks. Even with all these different tracks and game modes and like 45 different vehicles, the game is still almost unplayable. The AI ruined whatever semblance of challenge or engagement that could be present. The physics and controls are just so unbelievably broken that any fun you could have had with this game gets completely sucked out. They tried to have the mini games from the prior games show up, but they functioned so poorly that it just had me questioning my entire life. In fact, talking about this game anymore has me questioning my entire life. The game really is one of the worst video games of all time for a reason. For a while, it was the lowest rated game on Steam, period, and it's up there with Pro Skater 5 in terms of my hatred of it. I hate that this game has the Flatout title attached to it, and if you're somebody that values your own life, you should stay far, far away from this game. And so here we have Flatout releasing exclusively for the Wii in 2010. Now, when I initially ranked the Flatout games, I didn't talk about this game simply because I didn't even know it existed. But I'm very aware of the game's existence now, and honestly, I wish I wasn't. I played a bit of this game and immediately went, wow, this feels really similar to another game. What game, you ask me? And I respond with, stop asking me questions, that's not cool, I don't appreciate it, but if you must know, it feels just like this other game, this, what's it called, Flatout 3 Chaos and Destruction. Yeah, it turns out this game was also developed by Team 6 Game Studios. This isn't some mysterious hidden gem released for the Wii. No, what we have here is another flaming piece of shit. It's called Flatout, yeah, because it's flat out terrible. Yes, I know, absolutely hilarious and original. I'm a comedic genius out here. But you know what's not hilarious or original? This game. This game really just feels like Flatout 3. It's got a similar shitty art style. The physics, the controls, and really the driving in general is still dog shit. It's about as bad as Flatout 3's. I don't know if I'd say it's as bad as Flatout 3's, but it's still pretty awful. And the AI, yeah, that lobotomized 90-year-old would probably be a better driver than the drivers in this game. And honestly, I just couldn't spend much time with this one. It just felt like an insult to not only me as a person, but the human race in general. Like, yes, I would say it is slightly better than Flatout 3, but it's still one of the worst games I've ever played. It's one of the worst Wii games ever made, and that really is saying something. I wish I had never known that this game existed. My life would be so much better if I didn't know about Flatout on Wii's existence. I'd probably have a yacht, a mansion, another job with a game studio, I'd probably be in 10 more different game credits, and I'd probably have Wendy's Spicy Nuggets for life somehow. But no, I'm sitting here talking about Flatout on Wii. Before this gets any more depressing, I'm just gonna move on to a different game. And so here we have Flatout 4 Total Insanity, developed by Kiloton and released initially in 2017. This is the latest in the Flatout series, and thankfully it's considerably better than Flatout 3. I'm just kind of surprised this game exists at all after the failed abortion that was Flatout 3. I'm surprised anybody wanted to touch this series with a 10-foot pole, but here we are. So the developer of Flatout 4, Kiloton, they've made some other racing games, the WRC games, V-Rally 4, and Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown. Unfortunately, one of my most hated games of the last few years. But that's okay, because Flatout 4, it's actually pretty decent. I'm not going to act like it's anywhere near as good as some other Flatout games, but there actually is a little bit of fun to be had here, and it's clear that they had some understanding of the Flatout brand. Like, yes, it is a rather subpar average racer, but compared to the fucking piece of shit that was Flatout 3, this feels like Gran Turismo 3 in comparison. Anyway, this is a racing game, let's talk about the racing. It's alright, the handling and controls are okay at best, sometimes they're a little unresponsive and shaky, but I'm not going to act like it's awful or anything that you can't get used to. At the very least, the vehicles do handle differently from each other. Some of them have more weight, some of them have a harder time turning, and some of them boost better than others. Like the other Flatout games, as you smash into other cars, cause damage, and destroy things around the racetrack, you will gain boost, allowing you to go even faster. This game has an alright sense of speed, but I'm not going to act like it's anything great here. The racing, like I said, is just alright, and it falls more on the mediocre side. At least the racetracks are decent enough, they line up plenty of things for you to smash into, and there's some cool jumps here and there. There's also the Destruction Derby side of things, which, yeah, I don't really got much to complain with here. They actually did an alright job with the Destruction Derby aspect of this one. They did bring the mini-games back, well, one mini-game. They brought Stunt back, which is where you eject the driver out of the front seat, and there's a few little modes with this, like trying to send them through a bunch of flaming rings, or the stone skipping mode where you try to skip them along the water. And this, it isn't terrible, but I'm not going to act like it was particularly all that fun. The physics just don't work all that well, and I just didn't really find it all that enjoyable. Then again, I sometimes have trouble enjoying the mini-games of the older Flatout titles as well. Something else that I did not enjoy about Flatout 4, one of the biggest issues really with this entire game, is the rubber banding AI. Look, there's always been rubber banding in the Flatout games, but it's bad in this game, like really bad. I'd argue that it's some of the worst I've seen in a racing game in the last 10 years. They just magically catch up to you every single time. And it's like, no, you crashed your car 8 different times. I haven't crashed once. How are you right behind me? This is bullshit, Mom. But I'm not going to act like it's a total deal breaker here. It just means that you can't go into autopilot, and you really got to be on it with this one. Now, the last thing that I want to bring up is this game's presentation. For a 2017 game, a budget 2017 game I might add, yeah, it's not a very good looking game. You could probably convince me that this is a 360 game or a very early PS4 era title just due to a lack of detail in the environments, vehicles, and everything just being kinda ugly, and not in an aesthetic way either. I don't really care for this game's art style, and it totally doesn't have the atmosphere or vibes that the older games had. Same goes for the music, it's just questionable at best. I'll just say I won't be listening to these songs for the next 10 plus years. Overall, Flatout 4, it's a bit of a mixed bag. There is some enjoyment to be had here. The game certainly does have its moments, but for the most part, it's just kind of a generic arcade racer that feels not only watered down from the original games, but like it's missing the original game's soul. I'd have a pretty hard time recommending this one to anybody outside of die-hard Flatout fans, and even then, yeah, I don't know if they'd enjoy this one. Like, yeah, way better than Flatout 3 and a step in the right direction. Doesn't really mean it's a great game in its own right, though. And so here we have the original Flatout, releasing initially in 2005. Now, there had been plenty of racing games before Flatout, but Bugbear really wanted to develop something totally different from all the other racing games on the market. With most racing games, you're driving sleek, fancy, pristine vehicles with the prettiest interiors, and they're usually rocking some kick-ass horsepower. Not Flatout. Flatout instead had you playing as the junkers, the cars that are ready to be scrapped, that are barely able to stay together. These are the cars you would find in the crummy junkyards, ready to be trashed or scavenged for parts. The cars truly at the end of their life, the shit boxes, and this game is all about them just destroying each other. Whether it's in a race or a destruction derby, these cars are just tearing each other apart. And it's absolutely glorious. I love the original Flatout. This game just has a certain aura, a vibe, an atmosphere to it that none of the other Flatout games have. They are fully aware that the cars you are driving are shit. They know that they're on their last leg and are ready to be scrapped. But they know you're going to have some fun with them before that day finally comes. Before you put them down in the back old Yeller style, you're going to go for one last wild ride, and it's always going to be a good time. The racing in the original Flatout is excellent. Not only do the cars look like shit, and I mean that in the best way possible, they kind of feel like shit also. They're slow. It takes a while for them to really get going. They have trouble on turns. It's easy for them to flip over, and they can get positively fucked up real fast, but damn it, I love the driving in this game. It actually feels really nice, it's incredibly responsive, and the physics are excellent. The physics were actually very lauded back when the game came out, and I think they're impressive even nowadays. The handling and feel is actually really tight. It's easy to pick up and play, but there is also a little bit of depth to it. As you smash into other cars and destroy things along the track, you'll actually get boost, allowing you to go even faster, but this isn't crazy boost like some of the other Flatout games or say F-Zero. This is more like to help you get to your top speed just a little bit faster. But you will fill up like all of your boost if you're able to smash into the other car and cause the driver to fly out the window. Yeah, that was what the original Flatout was probably known for the best, is the ragdoll physics of people flying out of their windshield, and honestly, it never gets old. Here we are like 20 plus years later and it's still entertaining as hell. And speaking of entertaining, we have the car damage. The car damage and collision in the original Flatout really is some amazing stuff. These cars just get absolutely totaled and they let you see every inch of it. Outside of the Burnout series, extensive car damage is pretty much non-existent in the racing game hemisphere, especially when licensed cars are involved. Then the car companies just get all anal about the cars looking anything other than perfect. But Flatout couldn't give two shits about that. It lets you see these cars in their absolute worst state. Forget just a bump or a scratch. Pretty much every part of the car can go flying off. The wheels are hanging on for dear life. You lost all your doors 2 laps ago. The only thing really keeping you together at this point is a dream, and oh, I love it. It feels so authentic. It feels so visceral and raw that very few other racing games have ever been able to match. This game really just hit different. Yeah, it doesn't have a great sense of speed, the AI can be a little rubber bandy, the tracks admittedly can get a little repetitive, and I was never huge on the whole upgrade system, but the moment-to-moment racing is just so good in this game. There is also a demolition derby mode, and yeah, it works about as perfectly as you would expect. I mean, the game feels like it was tailor-made to be a demolition derby game first. This is awesome. There's also this special mode that would become a staple of this franchise where you try to launch your driver as far as you possibly can, usually at some kind of target. This would be expanded on in later games. It's fine enough here. Something though that's more than fine is this game's soundtrack. It's all licensed music, and man, it really just feeds into that aura. It is the most 2000s metal and hard rock that you could imagine, and it's so good. I love this game's soundtrack. I've been listening to it for like 15 years now, and it always takes me back to just a simpler time. They don't make games like Flatout anymore, and with that in mind, I have no problem recommending this game. If you like racing games, hell, even if you don't like racing games, but you're remotely interested in this game, just go check it out. It is dirt, and I mean dirt cheap all the time. You can find it for 99 cents on Steam, and it actually runs really well on modern computers. It even has Steam Workshop and Steam Deck support at this point. Yeah, there's been a lot of love and quality of life improvements to this one because it's a fan favorite, but if you really want it physical, you can go find it on PS2 original Xbox for real cheap as well. Regardless of your method, I think this game is totally worth playing. And so here we have Flatout 2, which released initially in 2006. So this game looks at the original and just cranks it up to 11. This is genuinely one of the most underrated racing games of all time, and I really do love it to pieces. This game is bigger, faster, stronger. There's way more content, way more vehicles, way more destruction and carnage. It's everything you really could want from a sequel. Now, I have heard some people say that they prefer the original and think that it's got a better atmosphere or aura or whatever. And while it is true that the original game does hit different even when compared to the second one, I still think the second game clears. This game just has an atmosphere and vibe to it that gets me almost giddy. Like, they know exactly what kind of vibe they're going for here. You're getting in some pretty shitty cars, all things considered, and they're ready to be trashed. Everything from the interface to the game's aesthetic and presentation, it just oozes charisma and personality that very few other racing games possess. It certainly helps things that this game is actually pretty decent looking. I think the original game looked fine, but this one looks quite a bit better. The vehicles look nice, sound nice, and the environments are well detailed. The frame rate is also pretty good as well, and it is actually able to keep up with all of the chaos. Now when it comes to the actual racing here, yeah, it's even better than the first games. So the first game really only had you driving the shittiest of the junkers, the cars that were ready to be totaled. Flatout 2 has plenty of those, but it also introduces other vehicles. And no, these aren't beautiful, pristine pieces of machinery made for the streets. They're still pretty shitty cars. You'd still find them in the junkyard. But they've also included cars that you'd probably find on a crummier used car lot, and I think that's actually pretty cool. You don't start with those cars, you gotta work your way up to them, but I think it's cool that there's some variety here and more than just the shitbox. But they also don't go too far. These aren't nice vehicles by any means, and they're all going to get totaled one way or another. The car damage and physics is even better than the prior games. The cars just get absolutely shreked out here and can seriously almost become unrecognizable at times. No, it doesn't go as hard as Wreckfest, but this is also a PS2 game. What do you expect? I think it's pretty impressive for a PS2 game. Actually, I think it's a bit impressive even now. When it comes to the physics though, oh, it feels real nice. You have a great sense of control. It's super responsive. The handling is tight. You do turns a hell of a lot better than you could in the first one. And overall, it just feels really great, especially when you start to actually go pretty fast. The original game, yeah, there really wasn't a sense of speed there. Flatout 2, there is actually a bit of a sense of speed to this game, especially with the last tier of cars, you know, those shitty used car lot ones that I talked about. Yeah, you can actually see some real speed with these, and you'll witness some of the craziest crashes of any racing game where your driver just flies out the front window and you're like, yeah, he's dead. He's gotta be dead. All the people that were impressed with Nico flying out of the front window in GTA 4, they haven't seen shit compared to Flatout 2. This game makes GTA 4 look like Sesame Street when it comes to flying out the window. And yeah, it's pretty entertaining. This game in general is very entertaining. The racetracks are a lot better designed than what the first game had. It doesn't ever get repetitive. There's actually a fair amount of them. And throughout these racetracks, there's plenty of things to destroy, plenty of things to run over so you get boost, and plenty of opportunities to smash into the other cars. And of course, when you start boosting, you start going faster, meaning you can hit other cars at higher speeds. Of course, that's what you're doing in this game. You're hitting the other cars over and over, while of course trying to win the race at the same time. And it really just doesn't ever get old. Like, it's kind of funny. It doesn't matter how many times I've come back to this game, it's always a great time. It's always comical and it's always satisfying. There's nothing complex or complicated about it. It's as simple as it gets. Car go fast and smash into thing. But sometimes simplicity really is key, and this is one of those games where I think it excels. It thrives in its simplicity. It just knows how to blast off when it comes to the fun factor. And there's actually a good amount of content to this game as well. Not only is there a bunch of Grand Prix, but there's the Destruction Derby mode, which is just as great as ever. There's the mini games, and even though a bunch of them are returning from the first one, there's still a number of new ones here. You'll be flying out of that windshield so many freaking times. You'll go through more windshields than the average Prius driver, but it's all in good fun. They also did address some minor issues from Flatout 1. The AI and rubber banding is quite a bit better. The AI actually seem like they have some intelligence here, and depending on the driver, they might even have unique behavior. And the rubber banding doesn't feel as egregious. It's not great, but it doesn't feel like they're on your ass 24/7. And it's these other little things that make the game even more replayable. Something else that makes this game very replayable that I have not brought up until now is the soundtrack. Ooh, the Flatout 2 soundtrack is goated. I got no other word for it. Goated. Some of the best licensed music of the 2000s is in this game. I could listen to this on repeat for days and days and days. And you know why I say that? Because I have. I've been listening to this soundtrack for like 15 plus years. It is so good. Just an excellent collection of rock and heavy metal. And not only does it set the mood really well for this game, but it's just some great music overall. I think even Flatout 2's most diehard of haters, if any of them exist, can agree that the music is still pretty great in this game. Flatout 2 overall, it's just a wonderful racing game. And I will give a brief shout out here. The game was ported to PSP as Flatout Head On, which seems like a fine enough port, but Flatout 2 is actually Steam Deck compatible now, so yeah, you could probably skip Head On these days. But all in all, I don't have a single issue recommending this game. It is criminally underrated. It is a sleeper hit. It's dirt cheap, and I think everybody should go check it out. But then here we have it, Flatout Ultimate Carnage, releasing initially in 2007. I have no problem saying that this is not only the best in the entire Flatout series, but one of the best racing games ever made. So what exactly is this game? It's essentially an enhanced re-release of Flatout 2, with better graphics, new gameplay modes, a new soundtrack, as well as new vehicles. And really, at the end of the day, it's just more Flatout 2. It's got everything you enjoyed about Flatout 2 and now even more. When it comes to the actual racing, it's pretty similar to Flatout 2. It feels very similar to Flatout 2, but I would say that it's a little better when it comes to the physics and the handling. It controls just a little bit tighter, and it actually feels really nice. The best of the entire series, in my opinion. When it comes to the car damage and destruction in this game, it is so good. It's better than Flatout 2's even. These cars just get shredded to pieces, and they let you see every single piece of it getting absolutely mauled. There is so much detail to these cars, it's not even funny. There's actually a pretty good number of cars in this game, and they can all just be annihilated into pieces, and that's thanks to the new graphics. It doesn't look way better than Flatout 2, but I think it looks pretty nice for 2007. There's a ton of detail on these vehicles, the environments look nice, the blur is just right where it feels like you're going fast, the frame rate was super solid, the lighting was good, and the general atmosphere, it's pretty great stuff. Sure, it doesn't have that dirty grunge feeling that Flatout 1 and 2 had. It looks a little cleaner here, but that's fine with me. I think the game still is a great aesthetic. I think the soundtrack is really great in Ultimate Carnage as well. Basically, none of the music from 2 carries over, which is a little odd, but what we have here is some really great stuff. I love the soundtrack to Flatout Ultimate Carnage, and I still listen to it to this day. And it helps push that wild, chaotic vibe that this game really is going for, this entire series is going for. Yeah, the music is choice. So not only is the racing better, the graphics are better, I think the soundtrack's great, but there's also some new extra game modes here. There's some new mini games. The progression is a little different from Flatout 2. There's the new Carnage mode, which is a bunch of fun, engaging new challenges. There's more content. It's more replayable. It really is the definitive version of Flatout 2. Like, Flatout 2's got some really great stuff to it, like that soundtrack, but to be 100 here, to be completely honest, if I'm coming back to a Flatout game nowadays, I'm most likely coming back to Ultimate Carnage. It's Flatout 2, but better. Shrimple as that. I don't really have much else to say. I already talked about how awesome Flatout 2 is, and this is that, and then some. It was released on Xbox 360 and PC. The PC version actually runs incredibly well. They got rid of stupid games for Windows Live, and it's just a delightful time. This genuinely is one of my favorite games of all time. It's one of my favorite racing games of all time. It's always just been this total hidden gem that I think is worth everybody's time, regardless of whether or not they like racing games. Flatout Ultimate Carnage, it rules. Flatout in general rules. Sure, Flatout 3, Wii, and 4 really aren't worth your time, but Flatout 1, 2, and Ultimate Carnage, oh, they are some of the best racing games you could ever play. And what's even crazier is they were the most budget racing games imaginable. When they released, they were like $20 full price. You'd find them in the bargain bin at Walmart, and they really ended up being this good. These games are part of a bygone era that I really miss, and maybe in the future we can get a Flatout 5. I think we can live in a world where we get Wreckfest 2 and Flatout 5 just fine. I think racing game fans would just be happy we're getting even more racing games to begin with. And I know somebody's going to bring it up, so I will say it here. Yes, I am aware of the game Trailout. I played Trailout back when it came out, and it was a decent little game that certainly reminded me of the good times of the older Flatout games, but it was just so janky and it felt so unpolished to the point that I was having trouble enjoying it as much as I wanted to. That and the boss fights were just awful. I did actually play all the way through the game, and there is some fun to be had there, but it's not Flatout. Flatout 1, 2, and Ultimate Carnage, the GOATs. And if you made it to this part of the video, you can comment the GOATs. That's our code word that you made it to the end. I'm rambling at this point, but man, I love Flatout. I could talk about these games forever. Yeah, Flatout, blah, 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 Flatout rules. Every time I said Flatout, you know what? This video is flat out done.